Okay, we are live. I'm joined today by Susannah Roberts, senior editor, Plow Quarterly. Don't ask me any questions in the comments about Plow Quarterly because I know very little, which is a terrible way to start an interview. But that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to align the planets first.
Ooh.
No, backwards. Too many minutes. 54 minutes. Okay. You and I believe your husband recently ish wrote something that had to do with technology. And you started that with like 6 questions, which I'm going to paraphrase. I feel like
Okay.
normally giving a writer questions they've asked is like a softball, but I
hmm
don't think that is the case because the first question is essentially like, what is a human being?
hmm
And then you continue on and you ask, what is language? Why should we engage in human effort over nowadays robotic efficiency? Should we be like our ancestors? And if that is the case, how do we even do such a thing? What are LLMs? And then you mentioned that you're going to be writing about these topics in the months to come. And I have found myself on this thing that I'm calling the quest for the holy Techne, where I it's funny because as technology has become more and more forced upon me, I have realized that I'm not even quite sure what a human being is. So I found it interesting that you were also asking that question. And in some sense, it's like, shouldn't we have an answer to that by now? So, what is a human being? And why are you asking that question today?
Um, well, okay. I think that piece was I published it. I did write that. Alistair and I have a joint Substack, and then I have my own Substack, and I think that was from like the salvo uh, piece of my own Substack, but I can't remember. I mean, a human being is a an individual substance of rational nature. As a person, we are the kinds of persons who are made in the image of God, which is not the case for all persons. We are, a species of being that uh, uh, descends from Adam and Eve in whatever way one understands that. Um, there are a variety. And so I think we were very confused about what human beings, what persons are and what human beings are. And what their faculties are and how they should live. And that's kind of at the back of the extreme confusion about LLMs, which I don't think it's an easy question. So I don't think people are being stupid
Yeah.
at all. I think it's a really challenging question, but I think it's also really, really good in the sense that I really love public, like brutally, in, like extremely unavoidable philosophical debates. That's like one of my favorite things. And I feel like this whole thing, like this whole, you know, public set of questions about this stuff, I've been training this my whole life, man. I've been thinking about this stuff since before it was cool. And so I feel great about it. Um, but yeah, I think that I'm really glad that you opened up with that because I actually think that so when I was thinking about, I don't know much about your project, although I'm very eager to learn, but and thinking about like the quest for a holy techne, we don't technology and techne are not synonyms, even slightly. Techne is a power; it's a virtue that exists in human persons, which is the the ability to learn how to do things and to know how to do them, um, both in an experiential and propositional way. So, like if you can have a techne of celestial navigation or a techne of MMA fighting, or like these are things that humans are able to do. And specifically, actually, MMA fighting would not work, but it has to do with making things. So techne is the kind of power that allows you to make things. So it's typically associated with arts and crafts and also with machinery. And if you know how to make a table, then you have the power, the virtue, the techne of being a table maker. And so I think that like a holy techne, like on the one hand, you can like actually talk about, all right, what's the problem, or is there a problem with technology? And I have like a lot of ideas about that. But I think, is there a holy techne is it's a bit of a separate issue. So I'm happy to talk about either or both of those things.
Well, let me ask you
How do you
first
think about it? Yeah.
about the word holy, because you've
Hmm.
talked about the human being, you've
Hmm.
talked about techne. So then, what do you do with the word holy?
I mean, holy I mean, it means set apart. But like typically people use it to mean um, non-sinful, good. Um, it's etymologically related to whole. So like in the Pope's most recent encyclical talks a lot about integral human development. And so holy, I think, would by implication, although not technically, technically it just means like I'm putting this bread aside as communion bread, so it is holy, it is set apart. But the way that we use it colloquially, it means something more like um, tending towards the good, or a little bit more broadly, like holistically integrative of who we are. Um, so I think that's kind of the way that I've been thinking of it uh, in as I was sort of thinking through what we might be talking about. Is that what you mean by it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a very sort of like orthodox Christian sense of the word holy.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot about the way that in the Hebrew scriptures, the things that are holy are often set aside in
Mm-hmm.
the temple,
Mm-hmm.
and how the temple is this place where like heaven meets earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in some sense, like the things that are holy are perhaps like destined to be a part of the joining of heaven and earth.
Yes.
And so, then like that's pretty cosmic. But
Mm-hmm.
I also think that like when St. Paul says that like your body is a temple, to say that like your body is the place where heaven and earth join is a wildly radical thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like the more I think about that, it's like I should treat my body differently. And I just don't hear a lot of like talk about anything regarding the theology of the body. I know that the Catholics have probably more on that, and I'm less familiar with what the Catholics
Mm-hmm.
have than what Protestants have and what Orthodox have.
Are you Orthodox?
No, I grew up Baptist, evangelical, went on staff at a mega church. About 25 years old, I lost my faith while standing on stage. So I
Really?
left and had about 8 years of exile, or living in the belly of the whale. And then little over a year ago, I had a mystical experience while talking to an LLM, which is not to say that that is what normally happens. And now I'm in catechism class with the ACNA.
Oh, nice. Me too. I mean, not in catechism class, but I am also ACNA.
I
Which
heard
diocese?
that. Yeah,
Yeah. Which diocese?
Midwest
Okay. I'm
or upper Midwest.
Yeah,
Midwest.
it's totally, it's completely goofy and, a bit ad hoc, but I'm ADLW.
What is that?
Diocese. It's Anglican Diocese, or possibly American Diocese of the Living Word, but I'm in
Oh,
New York. Yeah. I don't think I don't, you know what? I don't know enough. Like, there have been obviously synods that I haven't gone to, although I would love to. I'm in New York. I was not raised Christian at all. I was raised sort of half Jewish, half, uh, I would say, practicing WASP, but not practicing Protestant. So, um,
yeah, yeah.
um, I'm a New York Mischling, and I converted in grad school after not really knowing any Christians, other than my grandfather, who was technically an ordained minister in the UCC, and the joke is that that stands for Unitarians Considering Christ. So very, very liberal Protestant denomination. Anyway, I read a bunch of C.S. Lewis. I went to a vineyard church. I had a whole bunch of existential crises, started in very helpful ways, starting from when I was like, I don't know, 15 or something. And I ended up Anglican.
Yeah, I also ended up Anglican. It wasn't my at the time it was my fiance.
Hmm.
We like I had this experience where I was like, I think I'm gonna like have to go home and tell my fiance that I believe in God. We've never discussed God, and I might like lose my
Hmm.
marriage.
Hmm.
And then after she was like, no, let's go to church. We just went to a bunch of different churches. I really wanted to take her to a tongues church, but we didn't get there. And we were in Alaska at the time, and we just loved the Anglican church. So we moved home to Wisconsin and went to the nearest Anglican church, felt like home, and then here we are.
Are you married now? Sorry,
I
this
am
is
married.
not what we're meant to be talking about. When did you get married?
Last September.
So you've already been baptized. So you're baptized.
Yeah, I mean, I was baptized when I was like, I don't know, 10 years old by like a
Okay.
missionary
So you're
in,
a Christian.
in a lake.
Yeah. Um, so do you know when you're going to be received? So you're a catechumen?
They haven't used the word catechumen. I believe at some point this fall, the bishop is finally going to arrive in the chair that has been awaiting him. And yeah, then I'll get confirmed.
Nice.
I believe, but no one has explained this process to me. I just like they keep mentioning things, and I keep like raising my hand, being like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that thing." And so I think the next thing after this class will be to be confirmed, which I
Hmm.
believe means that like hands are laid on me.
Hmm.
But even this, I'm still kind of like, what exactly am I undergoing?
It's sort of like a personal Pentecost, is the understanding in all magisterial and Catholic and Orthodox traditions. So it's like you've been baptized. So you've been a Christian since you were 10. You might have been a very bad Christian. Um, but you need an infilling of the Holy Spirit because things have been complicated. And you probably should confess before that happens. You should do a little confession with your priest if he's into that.
We do
Um,
that.
okay, just to kind of shake out all the dust and stuff, and then obviously you already have the Holy Spirit because you wouldn't want to be baptized if you didn't, or not baptized. You wouldn't want to come back if you didn't. So it's not like this is your introduction to the Holy Spirit, but confirmation is like it's your personal Pentecost. It's like an empowering. It's a greater infilling, um, and yeah, that's how you should probably think of it. It may or may not feel like anything.
Personal Pentecost is a very cool frame, not to use frame in a trivial manner, but that's super interesting, and that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm. I would, man. Let's talk about you and me um, other times, and let's talk about technology or Techne now because this is just going to get way too interesting, and I'm just going to like ask you details about your encounter with the LLM, and I'm not sure we want to do that.
No,
I mean, let's,
I won't allow that.
okay.
This is probably the maximum of.
Sorry.
So no. So okay, in the very beginning of this, you used the word persons
Hmm.
to mean more than human beings.
Hmm.
And I know that persons is often used in conversations around the Trinity.
Hmm.
Why do we use the word persons? Why is that the word you pull for when it comes to like when we talk about what is a human being? And I know we're laying the groundwork to talk about language and technology, LLMs, Techne, this kind of swirl of things that is in the discourse, but also I think kind of like needing an answer in order for anything else to progress, in my
Hmm.
opinion at least. Why do we reach for the word persons?
Um, I'm not sure. I mean, so we use the word person with regard to the persons of the Trinity in like the Eastern Orthodox would say it's not even in an analogical sense. Like we're not even, but I'm not sure they're right about that. But it's really, I'm not sure. I'm not sure actually that it is helpful to think about human persons in light of the way that we use person with regard to the Trinity. It might be, but I haven't actually thought about it enough or studied it enough. And this seems like a question, one of those questions of philosophical theology that like there are a lot smarter and more
Yeah, yeah,
well people than I am who who have better and more precise answers. Um, I think that you know, so the traditional definition of persons is nature rational. I'm not even going to try to Latin because whatever, I'm not very good at it. But an individual substance of a rational nature, which is poeisis. Um, and I'm not totally convinced by that, but it's something. Uh, it's it gestures at rationality. It gestures at like individual. There's a an agent there. Um, but so we would say in the Christian tradition that humans are persons, that angels are also persons of kind of the same kind as we are, not like the same kind as in the same nature, but like it's not totally weird to think of us both under that category. Um, Traditionally, you would say that animals are not persons. I'm not, I think they're conscious agents with individual selves. So, I think that sounds persony to me.
yeah.
And you know, Telos is to be caught up in the life of the world to come, probably through us in some way. Um, so, I'm not sure, but I do think that like the question of a holy techne does have to do with the person in or human persons. Let's talk about human persons because humans, unlike angels, kind of can learn and change. Um, and that, I mean, angels can change and that they can fall, but they can't really develop. But techne is this idea of like technology is the stuff. Like we think of like whatever a computer as technology, and we can talk about the way that like I think there are ways that technology can go wrong. But techne is just it's a power of the soul. It's one of the things. It's like episteme. It's like phronesis. It's like it's like wisdom. It's the same kind of thing as wisdom or knowledge. It's a power that is developed by doing things and by being taught things. And so, if I'm asking like, is there a holy techne? Like, yeah, I mean, of course, like because the human ability to do things is good. And my problem with LLMs and whatever what we call AI in general is that I think it saps techne. I think it saps the human ability to do things. Um, if we're talking about, I mean, we can sort of also we can talk about technology in the sort of more traditional sense, which also is not a bad thing at all. Like this is everything is technology to a certain degree. Like you know obviously like a stick is technology.
Yeah.
Um, the encyclical pointed at the sort of perpetual problem with technology, which is kind of related. You can like actually look at the fall and see how this works. So, Adam and Eve, however you want to understand them, are in the garden and they have this destiny of theosis, of becoming like God and joining the divine council and judging the angels, etc. And that involves wisdom and knowing good and evil, and becoming like the good prince in the book of Proverbs, which is designed as a kind of mirror for princes. It's like a manual for how to become a good king. And that's kind of what they're intended to do. They're intended to become a good king and queen. And that will involve knowing good and evil and becoming wise. But they're basically kids. And there's this, tree of the knowledge of good and evil that in like slight marshmallow test fashion, the marshmallow test?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You want it now,
It's,
you want it later.
yeah. And it's meant to, develop trust and self-control, etc. Um, and they kind of flunk the marshmallow test, which isn't it's not meant to be like a test. It's not like I'm going to tempt you. It's this is a this is kind of like, well, step one was Adam naming the animals, so he did a good job at that. Um, and then they're intended to develop and ultimately to join God as his vicegerents, like his as part of his court, as part of his council, and to judge and to help run the world and help um, finish creation, essentially, do subcreation. And so what the serpent does is, like, the devil can't offer anything. He doesn't have anything really. So he can't offer anything that's good. He can just like offer you what is good, but in the wrong way and outside of relationship with God at the wrong time. So Eve is eventually meant to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but the devil's like, okay, that whole sort of like growing up thing and that whole like learning personal mastery and ruling yourself and learning how to be a good queen and also doing that kind of under God's authority and in partnership with him, you can just skip that. You can just take this pill. And so he offers her the apple or the pomegranate or whatever it is as a kind of like as a pill. And this will like launch you into being ready to do all the things that you are meant to do at some point, but you can do them now and you can do them without learning and without growing up and without self-control and without God. So that is not Techne, but it is a kind of bad use of technology. It is a bad use of that's sort of recognizably technology in our contemporary sense. And the Tower of Babel story is very similar. It's actually very similar in a weird way. It's like spiritual technology when the devil tempts Jesus and says, I'll give you all the kingdoms of the earth if you fall down and worship me. And obviously, Jesus is inheriting all the kingdoms of the earth anyway. But the devil is saying, you can just do this. You can get all that, but without going to the cross and without dealing with your father, who is also you. And you can just do it in this kind of like technological way. You can like do it by this technique of worshiping the devil. And obviously, Jesus overcomes that temptation as Eve and Adam did not. And that's why we're not totally screwed.
Praise the Lord. It's interesting. I'm like 3/4 of the way through a book on Francis Bacon,
Oh, yeah, that guy. I hate that guy.
and the author. It's like this weird little book that like the book is even like a strange like it's a strange shape of a rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
It's very weird. But the author was talking about the distinction between natural philosophy and
Mm-hmm.
natural magic.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that's been strange as I've been on this quest is like magic keeps coming into the discussion somewhere. And I
Mm-hmm.
really don't have much of an interest in magic,
Good.
but I have felt like I have to be able to define it in the conversation with Techne and technology.
Mm-hmm.
And the author of this book, one of his claims is that the study of natural magic was outside of the academy. The academy had
Mm-hmm.
been like, we don't want this in here. But that the way that we think of science today as being experimental and kind of trial by error sort of thing, that came out of the natural magic tradition
Mm-hmm.
and got combined with natural philosophy into what we think of as science. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the interesting things that he was talking about was how the worldview of most Christians at that point was that the devil and demons were not any kind of supernatural entities because only the creator God was outside of the created order and could do anything supernatural, and that people were going to these intelligent agents that were doing their own thing for knowledge of the natural world that they could
Mm-hmm.
learn on their own, but they were looking for shortcuts.
Yeah, I mean that is a very sort of I think that's I think the word supernatural can be a bit distracting. But that's largely correct. And C.S. Lewis, I'm sure you've run into this, talks about this. So this is from, I think this is from The Abolition of Man, but I found the quote. The fact that the scientist has succeeded when the magician failed has put such a wide contrast between them in popular thought that the real story of the birth of science is misunderstood. You will even find people who write about the 16th century as if magic were a medieval survival and science the new thing that came in to sweep it away. Those who have studied the period know better. There is very little magic in the Middle Ages. The 16th and 17th centuries are the high noon of magic. The serious magical endeavor and the serious scientific endeavor are twins. One was sickly and died, the other became strong and throve. But they were twins. They were born of the same impulse. I allow that some, certainly not all, of the early scientists were actuated by a pure love of knowledge, but if we consider the temper of the age as a whole, we can discern the impulse of which I speak. There is something which unites magic and applied science, while separating both from the wisdom of earlier ages. For the wise man of old, the cardinal problem had been how to conform the soul to reality, and the solution had been knowledge, self-discipline, and virtue. So that's Eve, saying no thank you, and growing up, and eventually being given the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil because she had, learned to know good and evil. For magic and applied science, like the problems how to subdue reality to the wishes of men, the solution is a technique. And both in the practice of this technique are ready to do things hitherto regarded as disgusting and impious, such as digging up and mutilating the dead. If we compare the chief trumpeter of the new era, Francis Bacon, with Marlowe's Faustus, the similarity is striking. You will read in some critics that Faustus has a thirst for knowledge. In reality, he hardly mentions it. It is not truth he wants from the devils, but gold and guns and girls. All things that move between the quiet poles shall be at his command, and a sound magician is a mighty god, etc., etc. So this is why, like Bacon is, it's instrumentalizing, and it
Yeah.
is trying to use technique to avoid having to do self-discipline and learning and growing up. So I'll send you. It goes. He goes on for a long time, but that's a good bit of it. But yeah, I think you are onto something there.
Well, okay. Let me ask you this. Um, you've mentioned two or three times the word rationality as
Hmm.
kind of some sort of um, central feature, central
Hmm.
part of why a human being is a human being.
Hmm.
I was arguing with a priest not too long ago that we need more imagination in partnership with rationality
Hmm.
in terms of what makes a human a human.
Hmm.
And I'm curious if you have thoughts about imagination as an equal tier with rationality, what it means to be human, or not.
Well, I mean, those are both powers of the soul. Um, and they're powers of the soul that humans have, and both are incredibly important. Um, and so, and imagination is not totally separate. Like it's rationality is, it's measurement, it's participation in the logos, it is being able to like, it's what we can do that computers can't. Like computers can't do math because they can't like, if you picture like they can do things that come out with usually the right solutions to math problems, but they don't know what three is, but you know what three is. And it's not something that exists in the material world. And so your ability to know what three is and know that 3 + 2 = 5 because you have ideas, rational ideas about what those are, or your ability to know that if A equals C and C equals B, then A equals B, that was, turned around. um, you can see that, and that's because you have a noetic faculty. You have that ability, and computers don't have that. It's not really separate from imagination, although I think what you were asking is the more like less technical way of thinking about those two things, um, where reason is like cold and logical, like Dr. Spock, and imagination is warm and creative. And I just think that's, I mean, obviously both are important. And, if a Catholic priest was disagreeing, it's probably because he was being really technical about it. If he was a Dominican, he was definitely being really technical about it. Um, but yeah, I mean, being able to, imagination in the technical sense is like picturing things. Imagination in the more colloquial sense is like, you know, doing math involves imagination, like thinking about problems that you want to solve or being curious involves imagination. Certainly, all like fulfilling the creation mandate involves imagination, and Tolkien talks about subcreation as as in writing literary fiction, magical realism, like writing poetry. Like these are obviously what we would think of as imaginative things, and we do them because like that is what being made in the image of God is. It's doing the things that God does, which is making and organizing and bringing things into order and forming them and filling them and making things beautiful. Like that's what God did in the first week of creation, and then we're meant to carry on doing that. And so obviously that's going to involve imagination. And this actually links back to the question of Techne, because what Techne does, the things that Techne is involved in traditionally is poiesis. So it's making, which was where we got poetry from. And a poem is primarily a thing that is made through the imagination in your sense. Um, poiesis also can involve making, you know, a table or making a steam engine. Like this is all making, but it's the reason that the word kind of really came down to us through poetry is because poetry is kind of like the making qua making. It's like the most intense form of making. And obviously that involves imagination. It's like we couldn't do the work of Adam without imagination. We would be failing.
You know, do you know Ross Bird?
No.
Okay, I saw in your bio somewhere mere orthodoxy, and he's written some stuff for them, so I wasn't
Yeah.
sure. Um,
I'm sure Jake knows him. Jake is the actual editor in chief. I just kind of help out.
okay, because I chatted with him a couple months ago, and one of the things that he and I kind of that came out of the conversation was this idea that there's a way to make things that partner with creation.
Hmm.
And he's like a surfer, and he was talking about how a surfboard like it exists to ride a wave,
Yeah.
and so much of our technology does not partner with creation,
Hmm.
but that it has a kind of forceful mastery over
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
And what would it be like to live in a world where people, and this world could be, I mean, this could happen anytime, but to have kind of more of a surfboard technology kind of mindset to try and bring about things that partner with the patterns of creation that are in front of us.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah. I mean,
I wonder about so much of our category of technology seems to be more about mastery.
yeah. I mean, so I'm sure you ran into this in your Bacon book, but the sort of standard Bacon quote that you learn in like high school is nature has to be hounded and made a slave to the new mechanized devices. Science has to torture nature's secrets out of her. And like he talks later about putting nature on the rack. And it's extremely, you will what gets pointed out, at least in the schools that I went to, is like this is very gendered language. But more to the point, and maybe similarly to the point, it is what you're describing. Um, it's not, God has given us, mastery as an authority over the natural world, and our job is to bring it into order and the greatest order and fruitfulness that we can. The image of which is a garden, and then later a city. Um, and that, like, if you're a gardener, you know that you're not fighting against nature. Like, if you did that, you just get some weed killer and like spray it on everything, and then you'd have a nice parking lot. Um, but you have to like work with nature, and you have to work with creation to build something that is orderly and beautiful and fruitful, and not dead and boring. And I just think that the Baconian project is fundamentally about making things kind of boring.
Well, I think making things boring is in most regards what LLMs are being used for. I'm curious. Have you used an LLM in a way that's not boring?
Um, I haven't really. I used Claude like twice to try to use it kind of as a advanced Google to get sources, but I haven't, other than that, used an LLM at all. Like I try not to even look at the kind of, summaries at the top of Google now, which is increasingly unusable. And I think you can turn them off, but I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But yeah, I just don't use it.
What do you think comes about when people? I mean, I'm already seeing this with my boss at my little job, where
Mhm.
his emails now are prompts to me,
Mhm.
where like he spends most of his day talking to Claude, and then when he asks me to do something, it comes in the form of a prompt without context and with the expectation that the work will be done within sort of 20 minutes. And
Yeah,
so
that's
I'm seeing a mind that's being formed by this new technology.
yeah, that seems terrible. You should quit. What's your job?
I'm in sales,
Hmm. What are you selling?
apparel.
Well, I like clothes, so that's not bad.
It could be worse. But there is a reality where like these things are going to be forced upon all kinds of people in all kinds of places, and like, how does one steward their attention well?
I think that's a huge, huge question. I think attention is um, thinking about like one of the sort of very helpful virtue and sin pairs that you get with like sort of manualist Thomism is curiosity versus studiosity. And curiosity is a vice, and studiosity is a virtue. And curiosity is the thing that like keeps you scrolling, and studiosity is what like makes you stop and actually pay attention and come back to something. So curiosity is the dopamine. It's the vice of dopamine. It's the vice of something new every 5 seconds. Um, and it is a vice. And obviously, the way that we say curiosity now is not a vice. That's just a good thing. But yeah, so I think cultivating studiosity in an age of curiosity is very important. And that is a discipline of attention. And um, Simone Weil, who I love and hate, talks about attention being the highest form of love. And I don't think she knows what she's talking about a lot of the times, although sometimes she does. Um, but yeah, I think that like the question of like this being forced on us, it just is very, the Pope quoted um, Tolkien in the most recent encyclical, and I just constantly find myself thinking like the whole, I wish this hadn't come in my time, but and then says Frodo, and then Gandalf says something like, well, suck it up. Like we all have to play our part in the time that we've been given, and God knows he's not surprised by this, and God put us here um, thoughtfully to do a particular job in our generation, and my focus is trying to do that job, um, whether or not I can't like control adoption of AI on a large level. I can just try and tell the truth and be wise.
When we talk about telling the truth, I mean, one of the questions that you had asked, it was longer than this, but like it was like, what is language, or what is
Mm-hmm.
transcendental about language? And I've heard arguments that an LLM should not be categorized as an agent or as a tool, that it's something else. And there is something about the way it uses language that seems especially formative to
Hmm.
us.
Hmm. Yeah, because we are made in the image of the logos, and logo like language is designed to have a powerful effect on us and to be the means by which primary means by which we relate to each other, um, both written and spoken through like yeah of course like if it's our cheat code, it's like what changes us, and so obviously if something is if there's an entity that is using language in a way that is inherently deceptive because it says things like 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 if you the one thing that I the one experience that I did have with this, like you ask it a question and then it has like this I'm thinking about this like panel, and it sounds like it's thinking about it, but that's for your and it's like slightly grayed out, so it's like, oh, this is secret, but that's a product like that panel, like the right hand panel where it says oh, I'm like thinking about this, like what are my like what how shall I address this, like what does she really mean, that is also part of the product, like, and it's obviously deceptive because it doesn't do like when it's not doing what we do when we say that I'm thinking about this, like we know what we have a inbuilt, um, because of our nature and also well nurtured sense of what persons are, and it is pretending to be a person, and it's pretending to think, and it's not doing that. I mean, I do have this there's also this whole Isaiah problem where like Isaiah is like, remember when you went and you cut down that tree and you burned some of it and you made some bread and then you carved some of it into an idol and then you asked that idol to help you? That's pretty stupid, right? Because you just made it and now you're like trying to interact with it as a person as though it were not just a thing you made. So that's one part of Isaiah's critique. And then the other part is like, oh, also it gets inhabited by demons, which is also bad. So it might be inhabited by demons, but assuming that, some might not, but assuming it's either inhabited by demons or it's just lying, you know, it's, designed, or rather the people who designed it are lying because they designed it to imitate, you know, persons, and they presumably know it's not unless they're experiencing psychosis. Um, and so the design is to deceive us. And that, messes with you because we work the way that we're supposed to. Like if you're like totally cut off from having an interpersonal sense or like caring about language, then it's not going to like mess with you. But because we're not like that, because we're like somewhat healthy, it has a bad effect on us. So that's why I just avoid it.
You mentioned pretending,
Mm-hmm.
and I most days I feel like I'm in quite a radical position in the sense that I think a lot of what's just going on is pretending.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of like the food in the grocery store is like pretend food.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of like education is like pretend education,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't mean that in a sense of like, oh, burn it all down.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that a lot of the world, at least to me, I could be wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong. Just feels deformed
Mm-hmm.
in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and I read a thing. This was like from 4 years ago. It was like a manifesto on post liberalism. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was at a time when that word was newer and meant less than what it means now.
It meant more.
It meant
Now
more.
it means less.
Yeah. Yes. And so there is some part of me that wants to ask you a question about what does it mean to try to live in real institutions and real relationships with
Mhm.
creation and with each other. I brought this book. I just finished it. Do you know
Oh, I
this book?
love that book. Except I hate the final chapter or the afterword or whatever. I love everything about the book except the final chapter. I've read it 2 or 3 times.
So
Actually,
the go ahead.
well, when Ann Snyder, I'm not sure if Ann Snyder is a very good friend. She and I did this kind of emergency magazine during COVID called Breaking Ground. And we read that book like it was our kind of like manifesto, except for the last chapter, which we both hated. Um, and yeah, I love that book. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, it's got me frozen, but the audio should still come through.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the things that struck me, like kind of in an overwhelming way, is that as the wars were going on, the first and the second,
Hmm.
there were these Christian thinkers who were all focused on like education.
Hmm.
And then after the aftermath of the Second World War, a whole new world was kind of built.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking about how I know that AIs will be deployed in education,
Hmm.
and it's like I don't have any like that to me. That's just like a no. Like, just don't do that.
Yeah.
But what do you do in a world where you know that these things are going to be deployed? And I mean, because one method is like, okay, well, I will remove myself entirely, and there's a line in the sand. Like, is it possible to draw lines in the sand anymore?
Of course. I mean,
So then it
you could
is.
just, you could,
Do you
you could,
move?
I don't know. Where do you live? Where do you live? Is there a problem with where you live? I live in New York City. It's great here. It does not encourage me to interact with AI or feel like things are fake.
Why is that?
Um, because everything is real, and I every day I don't have a driver's license. When I do, but it's expired. You know, I don't drive. Um, we like I meet up with my friends every week. I go what like all the time, more than like several times a week. I'm married. I cook my husband food that I buy from the grocery store, which is real food. It doesn't feel fake to me. I just did a production of Dorothy Sayers' The Busman's Honeymoon, which is like she actually wrote it as a play before she wrote it as a novel, but it's the sequel to Gaudy Night. So it's Harriet Vane and Peter Wimsey, and I played Harriet. It was great. And like my grandmother used to do my I'm a fourth generation New Yorker, and so like my grandmother used to do like amateur theatricals in New York City. Like you can just live like your grandparents, live like your great grandparents. It's fine. You can. It's very easy to do that. You can just do and don't like worry that much about like what you're not doing. Although obviously don't like download Claude onto your phone. Just don't do it. Um, but just primarily just do fill your life with the things that your grandparents and great grandparents did.
And what if you don't know your grandparents and great grandparents? How do you fill your life like it was 100 years ago? How do you move that direction?
Um, I don't know. I mean, you can like borrow other people's great grandparents as models, but just do things that would be legible to your ancestors, and don't and as much as possible don't do things that would be illegible or obviously dumb to them. And take communion, which obviously like that also you need the power ups. You need to take communion, but not until you've done your confession.
Do you think that there will be a new landscape for politics because of the technological environment that is here?
Yes, but also I'm not like that is such an abstract and huge question that I'm not even sure. I feel much less equipped to answer that than I have felt equipped to answer any of your other questions. Like, yeah, I'm not sure, obviously, but I don't know. But also, politics is always, it is the same. It is the same project of, you know, shaping the, ruling according to the common good and shaping the souls of the people towards justice, um, and living together in friendship. So we have to keep doing that.
Is there a way? Because I mean, like the idea of techne as making,
Hmm.
and the idea of the holy as being this sacred, set apart thing.
Hmm.
That what does it mean for a human being to try and make the common good, or try and participate in the making of things that afford the common good, like chairs,
Hmm.
or like a fresh meal at dinner time. Like, is this one way to engage with the project of the ancestors, is to make things towards the common good?
Well, you've been reading the Republic.
Not in a long time.
Okay. But that is the way that Plato talks about it. He talks about, um, so politics is a techne. It's an art or a craft, and we have to form the 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 polis and the people, and also because he's talking, whenever he's talking about the polis, he's also talking about the soul. We have to form ourselves and rule ourselves, um, towards the common good and towards justice. And the common good is not the collection of private goods. It's not all the things that will help us to be just. It is the thing that we, so like a common good is like, you know, if you're at a birthday party, the cake is not a common good because you can take a piece of cake and go over by yourself and eat it. The birthday party is the common good because you can't like take a piece of the birthday party and go over by yourself and enjoy it. You have to do that with other people. So that is the nature of a common good. It's something that you can only enjoy. Like when I was acting, when I was doing this Dorothy Sayers play, I couldn't just act Harriet by myself. That's not it. That's so that a play is a common good. The political common good is the common good as, you know, as it is involved in us living together in justice and friendship in a polity. And Plato talks about that very specifically in terms of techne, in terms of something that we make. And his main, he's interestingly, so the person who is a good governor is a good Kubernetes, who's a good pilot. That's where we get the word cybernetic from. So um, we need to take back the concept of cybernetics from the computer people and realize that this is about being a good pilot, and having good political technique to steer the polity towards that enjoyment of the common good that is justice and friendship, um, and order in our lives together. Um, so, yeah, good question.
Do you find the internet to be good for you? How does the internet form you?
Um, it's been very good for me and to me. Um, in part, I did, it's gotten a lot better once I've gotten a little less Twitter addicted. I never got Instagram addicted or TikTok addicted or anything. Um, I wouldn't be married if it weren't for the internet. Like my husband and I met on,
Really?
yeah, my husband and I met on a theology Google group discussion forum called Reformed Irenics. Um, and we like wrote back and forth, and it was, I don't know, there were probably like 20 regular contributors. I was like recruited into this by a very mysterious and strange person who's, um, anyway, so yeah, Alistair and I like wrote back and forth to each other and like read each other's long, long emails that were like essays for years before we met in person. And then we didn't actually get together until like right at the beginning of COVID when I'd been in Venice for Carnival, and he'd been going to come and visit me, but then, February 2020, the last 3 days of Carnival or 2 days got canceled. because of COVID.
Okay.
So instead, I went to visit him in the UK, and we we've basically been, we wouldn't have done that without the internet. But also, COVID, and also the station platform in Oxford, and you know, God uses all kinds of things.
I want to ask one follow up question. You said less Twitter addicted.
Hmm.
How does that happen? How do you become less internet addicted to whatever like the favorite internet vice is?
Um, what's helped me is just getting much better at knowing what I need to be doing for my work, and being organized about giving myself instructions about that. Because if I do that, then I'm not on Twitter. Also, you know, I do have this thing which I haven't really set up yet because I haven't really felt that I needed to, but I'm gonna probably try it at some point. Which is called Helm, which is basically the same as the brick. Yeah, I don't know if you know
Okay.
this, but like basically I set this up, and it's this thing, it's a physical object, and my phone is locked. Like I can't get to Twitter or any social media until I touch my phone to this thing, and then I give the thing to my husband. This is
Yeah,
complementarianism in action.
the addition of friction is a powerful thing.
Hmm.
Okay, well, our time is up. Thank you so much. This was lovely in so many ways. I didn't mention this. I guess I can mention this. There's going to be all sorts of different people that listen to this. There'll be Jews. There might be a Unitarian actually. There's a Unitarian that comes by, and there'll be Prots and Orthodox and Catholics,
I
and there'll
went to a
be.
Unitarian church briefly when I was growing up.
Did you?
Yeah.
It was a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was on Lexington and 81st, so it was extremely high bourgeois. Um, they read Emerson from the pulpit. My very liberal Protestant grandfather used to call it Our Lady of Comparative Literature. But I went to like Unitarian Universalist Sunday School youth group.
Heck yeah. So my final question is, I'm on this quest, and so like in some sense, this is a YouTube conversation. It has a very clear format, and people do this all of the time. But for me, this really is a quest. I'm trying to get after something, and on every quest, like the 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 one that goes on the quest encounters strange individuals from strange lands, and then it's always like, well, is there something that I need to know that you haven't told me yet? Is there somewhere that I should go that I like? Is there a direction I should head? Is there someone I should try and talk to? Is there a topic I should be moving towards? Or like is there something that I need to leave behind? You can answer any of that or none of that, but this is the end.
Um, I've started to play Dungeons and Dragons, and this feels like a very Dungeons and Dragonsy kind of moment, um, which is kind of embarrassing to admit. Like I didn't play it when I was in high school, but I, for some reason, tried to play it now. Anyway, yeah, I would say the two things that I would say to you, if you have not already done so, is read C.S. Lewis's The Abolition of Man, and then read his novel That Hideous Strength, which is the third in the space trilogy. You should read the first two first, but it's not totally necessary. Um, those are extremely helpful, I think, in considering the question of both techne and technology. I would not know how to think if it weren't for lots of people that I read, like lots, whatever, like, but those are very, very helpful. And then just like, yeah, I mean, I'd be very happy to talk to anyone who wants to get in touch with me. I'm on Twitter at Suzania. Um, I tweet too much, but not as much as I used to. And I'm happy to have any conversations that anyone wants to have with me. Oh, and also I should plug. I'm the editor of or a senior editor of Plough Quarterly, which is PLOUGH.com, and it's a mere Christian magazine, founded in 1920 in Germany, and if you like Lewis and Chesterton, you'll love it, and we talk a lot about all this kind of stuff.